Hello, everyone, and welcome to GAAPP Academy 2021. I'm Tanya Winders, the president of Global Allergy and Airways Patient Platform, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on storytelling. Facts fade, stories stick. We could not provide these capacity building webinars without the very generous support of our sponsors. So I want to give a shout out to AstraZeneca, Sanofi Genzyme, Regeneron, and Novartis for their continued support of the more than 60 members in the Global Allergy and Airways Patient Platform, as well as the organization itself. So as we get started, here's the introduction slide of myself, Tanya Winders. I have served as the president and CEO of Allergy and Asthma Network in the U.S., a patient advocacy organization for the past 8.5, 9 years, and have served as your GAAPP president since 2017. Today, I will be talking specifically about the importance of storytelling in all of our work as patient advocacy organizations. And you can see that we've divided our presentation up today in why storytelling matters, how to use stories purposefully, how to use words deliberately, how to use vulnerability thoughtfully, how to get rid of the unnecessary stuff, and resources to help and support you in your journey of storytelling. We'll also provide a Q&A session live at the end of the presentation. So let's dive in. Stories stick, facts. Why does storytelling really even matter? Well, this is a quote that I love. The world is shaped by two things: stories told and the memories they may leave behind. The truth is, we as human beings connect on an emotional level, and stories help us to do that every single day in our work and in our personal lives. And so that is how our world is shaped and why it is so very important. Now, when you start to tell a story, it's important to start at the beginning and to give some thought to how you want to tell that story. You have to know your audience. Are you talking to patients? Are you talking to caregivers? How about healthcare providers? Primary care versus specialty care versus a multidisciplinary team. All of those audience considerations are going to have a significant impact on the way that you tell your story and the details that you provide. Are you talking to policymakers? Policymakers traditionally believe and care about three things, and they all equal votes. But the emotion of a story, the evidence of a story, the economics of a story are important to those policymakers. And ultimately, they view things through the lens of their constituents, their voters. And then also the general public. The general public is so inundated with so many stories, so many facts, so much information coming at us from every different angle on any given day. So knowing your audience and knowing the key message, your main aim and goal that you want to convey is of the utmost importance. Now, when we think about that call to action or our main aim or goal, it's, are we trying to drive awareness? Are we attempting to educate someone? Or are we initiating a policy change? Or maybe it's something completely different. But starting with that end in mind, again, is at the forefront, should always be at the forefront of your planning purposes when telling a story and throughout the time that you're actually sharing that story. I like this quote that I heard: impressing someone is not the same thing as connecting with someone or getting them to act. And it's using our stories that oftentimes we do connect with people. Sometimes when we're sharing facts or knowledge or intellectual information, we may be doing it with the wrong motive, to actually have someone be impressed by us versus, being honest with them, telling them a story about our own experience or someone that we know, and in fact, connecting on a more personal level. So the aim of that story should be to attract someone into that story, to engage them, to delight them with the story, but also to have a clear call to action in telling that story. And we all have that. As nonprofit leaders, we all have a mission, a vision, an aim for our organization, a very worthwhile community and cause that we serve. And so, again, our aim is overall to help achieve that mission, but there may be more specific nuances in that driving awareness, educating, or initiating policy change, or perhaps something even different. So the next element of storytelling is to use stories purposefully. The fastest way to change a mind is to touch the heart. And I think that leading with your heart is so very important when you're communicating, especially when you're communicating or trying to raise funds for your organization, because it's these stories of real life impact and real life change that ultimately people connect to and cause them to get involved or to act differently. So, logic is the brain, emotion is the heart, and the truth is, knowledge alone rarely moves someone to act. We can spout statistics and facts and burden and science all day long, but greater than 80% of all decisions are based on emotion, according to the literature. So, why do we spend so much time spouting these facts and this knowledge and intellect when we know that less than 20% of the decisions are actually based on that? We need to always go back to the why behind the what. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why do you work so diligently for the nonprofit that you lead? So, leading with that emotion, keeping it at the center and the heart of the matter and the story is vitally important for connecting and making a difference. Using words deliberately. The truth is, words matter. Choosing your words wisely and using them deliberately should be in the very consideration of every story you tell. Because let's be honest, it's very easy to tell a story in such a way that people are like, huh, that was a nice story. But if we just choose our words deliberately and really think through the words that we want to use beforehand, it can really leave someone with that feeling of awe. So let's set the scene and sell the sizzle of our stories. Why would we use words like sad or hurts when you could use words like heart-wrenching or agonizing? Another example may be using words like amazing or awesome, which I use quite frequently. But the better word may be awe-inspiring or mind-blowing. Those are very vivid adjectives and terms that can help to set the scene and sell the sizzle of your story a little bit better. When selling the sizzle, it's important to evoke all of your senses. When you're telling the story, what do you see? What do you smell? What could be tasted, touched, or heard? All of these key sensory issues should be included in a good story. And then anytime you're framing a story, it's often encouraged to use the 5 W's in 1 H. And that's who's in the story, what happened, when the story occurred, why were they there, what were they doing, and then how. And so remembering that structure of the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, and why, and how, is really a great way to make sure that your story is cohesive and that you're evoking all of those senses. Most stories have some degree of conflict. And so when you're thinking about a problem that you're trying to solve or a conflict that you're trying to address, it's important to frame it in the 3 C's of character, conflict, and conclusion. So as you tell your stories, think about who are the characters? How could you describe them? How can you really bring that conflict to life and bring your listener into the midst of that conflict? And then how do you propose the solution? How do you frame the discussion such that at the end of it, the listener is thinking, okay, what do I do next? How do I get involved? The next point here is around being creative with chronology. And so chronology is just the timing. And oftentimes when we tell a story, we tell it from beginning to end. But what if we foreshadowed the end and told it at the beginning and then worked our way back? What if we jumped right into the midst of the conflict and then worked our way through the timeline from beginning to end? So be creative. Don't think you always have to start at the beginning and end at the end. Perhaps there's a way to tell your story with a different chronology that will be more impactful. Next, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And sometimes we feel like we have to have a lot of words in our story. We have to be verbose in the way that we're laying out the case for support for our organization. But that's simply not true. Oftentimes we can show an infographic or a simple picture of a family's life that was changed and talk around that rather than using words upon words upon words to explain it. So really think about using your words deliberately and in fact cutting down on those words, keeping it simple. And then finally, end with awe. When you're telling a story, you want your reader or listener to be left with that wow, like what a difference that story made, what a difference that organization makes in the lives of people. So make sure that you leave your reader with that sense of awe, whether that's shock or awe or just amazement at the amazing things and the wonderful things that you're doing in your organization and in the lives of your community. Now, I have listed 3 examples here of very compelling stories. These are YouTube videos that you can go to. And again, I will link here and try to show one. We may have to just make them available after the actual recording here. Okay, it looks like I cannot exit the recording in order to show the video, so I'll have those added in at the conclusion of the video time today for you to take a look. But these are really great examples. The reunion video is one that is so compelling. It's in a foreign language, but I was sitting on the edge of my seat the entire time reading the subtitles and entering into the lives of these 2 men and the differences that they made in each other's life. And ultimately, the product was Google, and the way that Google played a role in reuniting these 2 childhood friends is really heartwarming. The next is the Olympic anthem, and it is around Samsung as the product. And again, about the entire video, you don't necessarily understand what product they're trying to promote, but it's so powerful in bringing you in and helping us to remember that we are all one, even though we come from many different countries and many different languages. That we all have the same aspirations and goals of living up to our God-given potential and performing at the highest levels in an event like the Olympics. And so Samsung does a beautiful job of telling that story through this video. And then the final video is a GoPro video, and GoPro is the little camera that one can wear on their hat or part of their body or what have you, and film and record while they're in live action. And this is a video about a fireman going in to a engulfed home and looking for survivors and actually finding a set of kittens that have been born and in rescuing those kittens. And so again, a very creative and unexpected use of the actual product that was being sold, the GoPro. But again, these are very vivid examples that I hope you'll enjoy watching after our recording today. The next point is to use vulnerability thoughtfully. People admire your strengths, but truly, people connect with our weaknesses. So oftentimes we are hesitant to be vulnerable when telling a story. We feel like we need to be that professional, strong, authoritative voice. But that's not what really helps people to connect and to want to be called to action. It is when we share our weaknesses, when we share our challenges, that in fact we become more human and therefore more connected. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. This is a leading thought that has really helped me in ensuring that I stay authentic and that I stay connected to the community that I serve and that I represent at Allergy and Asthma Network and at GAAPP. And so think about how you can use that vulnerability and demonstrate that you truly care appropriately in your stories. Perhaps it's sharing something private about your own journey. Perhaps it's sharing a vulnerable time where you pushed through your fears and moved forward. Uh, and you know, I heard yesterday of a woman who said, I feel called to share something, but it's painful. It hurts, and I may cry. And I said, that's okay. Don't be afraid to cry. Sometimes it is that shedding of a tear that connects your hearts forever moving forward. And it's how we were created to be emotional human beings. And I think as women, oftentimes we feel that we should apologize for that. I know I did. For a number of years, anytime I would tear up, I would apologize for that emotion. And then finally, one day, a mentor of mine looked at me and he said, stop doing that. That is what makes you so endearing, and why people connect to you and love you is because you are emotional and because you are willing to go to those more vulnerable spots of your life and your heart and your spirit. So don't be afraid to show that emotion and to truly demonstrate vulnerability in your storytelling. Our next point, keep it simple, silly, or stupid, depending on which version of this acronym that you like to use, but get rid of unnecessary stuff. So many times when we're telling our stories, we add in, these verbose descriptions or points that really get us off track from the main thing. So it's important to tell the story in a way that engages all of those senses, as we talked about before, but it really should continue to reinforce your main point or action than going off on tangents. So how do we do that? First, we have to minimize distraction. Remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in this case, a video may be worth 1,000,000. So sometimes, again, we'll want to write out our case for support. Sometimes we may want to show a slideshow with one or two things, but then ultimately, is there an opportunity to use video, which, as we learned last time in GAAPP Academy, is so impactful in breaking through the noise and communicating your story in the most effective, time-sensitive way. And that's very important in the world we live in today, where everything is so fast-paced, where there simply isn't the time to sit down and read maybe a 6 or 8 page article or 1,000-word essay, that perhaps someone will listen to a 1 or 2 minute video and connect with your story in that way. And we've already talked about the ending and the importance of leaving them with a sense of awe, but also a sense of question. What can I do? How do I get involved? Where do I go from here? Are there those calls to action, and really giving them that very clear, here's where you go next, here's what you do next. And making sure that we don't overlook that sometimes we think, oh, well, I've told them everything about our organization, everything about why I want them to do a certain, get involved in a certain program or do a certain fundraiser. But what we haven't actually done is explicitly given them the next steps. Go to this website, donate here, click on this link, call this number, whatever that case may be. We need to be very explicit in that call to action. Now, there are a number of different tools of the trade and resources to help. You don't have to recreate the wheel when it comes to storytelling. So I'm going to share some of those that are low cost or no cost and encourage you to explore and do the same. So the first is a play on PowerPoint. It's called Prezi. And if you haven't used Prezi, it's a really simple, low-cost tool that allows your PowerPoint presentations to come to life more evidently. And so, again, I would encourage you to check that one out because it's a great one. The next is Ceros or Shorthand. And these are cloud-based opportunities to really create content that in the digital space is more inviting. They're companies that work with you to basically look at your story, to look at your site, to look at your content and say, how do we bring this up a notch? How do we tell the story more effectively? And make sure that it gets the level of engagement that you need. And again, very inexpensive. So you can just Google these tools of the trade and find different sources to help you tell your stories more impactfully. One of the tools that we've begun using at Allergy and Asthma Network is called Lumen 5. It's an opportunity to create video content, again, for very low cost, using stock imagery and a few slides to tell your story, to create that burden and impact, but that it adds music, it adds, an element of that awe-inspiring piece that definitely is very valuable. So Lumen 5, and then Doodly is the whiteboard animations, and you've seen these at the Global Allergy and Airways Patient Platform that we just did 2 of these, one on shared decision making and one on participating in clinical trials. And Doodly, again, is a very easy to use platform to create your own whiteboard animations. And these are often very useful in explaining complex terms. So let's say that you're trying to explain a policy initiative around access barriers. And oftentimes these policies can be very complex and convoluted. Things like here in the US, step therapy or copay accumulators or non-medical switching. And so we've utilized this Doodly program to create a very simple whiteboard animated process to explain what those concepts and terms are and to get people to take the next step, contact their policymaker, and get involved in addressing the issue of barriers to access. So that concludes our time together as far as the tips on storytelling. Remember, stories stick, facts fade. So certainly think about how you want to tell your story, how you want to evoke all of those senses, how you can use your words more deliberately and purposefully, how you can be more vulnerable with your listener and your audience, and then again, how to keep it simple and get rid of that unnecessary stuff to tell your story in the most effective, efficient manner. Once again, I want to thank the generosity of our sponsors, AstraZeneca, Novartis, Sanofi Genzyme, and Regeneron. I want to thank you as our listeners, and stay tuned as I share the videos that I promised earlier throughout the presentation.
ये मैं, ये यूसुफ लंगोटिया यार सी मेरा। लाहौर में हमारे घर के सामने एक बड़ा बाग था। उस बाग का गेट बाबा आदम के जमाने। रोज शाम को हमने वहाँ पतंगे उड़ानी और उसके बाद जाके यूसुफ की दुकान से जजरिया चुरा के खानी।
झझरिया।
और मेरा साहब नमस्ते।
नमस्ते, मेरी पोती मुंबई वाली।
और बेटे क्या हाल चाल है? बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे।
हेलो, अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
फाजिल स्वीट्स।
हाँ जी। दादाजान, दिल्ली से किसी की कॉल है।
हेलो,
यूसुफ अंकल।
कौन?
जी मैं सुमन बोल रही हूँ दिल्ली से, आपके बचपन के दोस्त बलदेव जी की पोती। याद है बचपन में आप दोनों झझरिया चुरा के खाते थे?
बचपन की तंग गली फिर से कूद फांदे, छोटी छोटी मीठी चोरी गांठ लेके बांधे। एक पतंग सा उड़ता था परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह, परिंदों की तरह। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था, एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
पार्टीशन के वक्त हम रातों रात हिंदुस्तान आ गए।
दादू,
यूसुफ दी बड़ी आजादी।
कागजों की कश्तियों में डूबा रहता था, झांकती खिड़कियों में उलझा रहता था। वो भी क्या दौर था, मन पे न जोर था। एक दौर था मन मन मोर था।
Kakutwano lekagisano ebo pagan swe moko.
For we are young and free,
With growing majesty rise,
measure the
planetary
vivido de amore e de esperanza atardeci.
Anya ki tu bersa tu dan majus. Happy and glory. Yon avon puliti somnilse.